Although this whole course is about a method we can use to prepare sermons, I'm aware that faithful biblical preaching is so much more than just applying a method. In fact, good preaching is better caught than taught, I think. Probably the best way to learn how to preach is to hear good preaching. Not just once or twice, but over and over again, over many years. And we need to do more than just hear good preaching. We need to thoughtfully listen to the sermons we hear. We need to ask ourselves, what makes this sermon, this preaching particularly good or not? Why is it when I hear this preacher preach that I'm on the edge of my seat, I'm hanging on their every word? And why is it when I hear this preacher preach that I quickly stop listening and start thinking about Sunday lunch? Now, obviously, there are spiritual elements involved in what happens when we listen to preaching. But it's helpful and it's right, I think, to carefully evaluate the preaching we hear. And that's why we're going to listen to some well-known preachers from across the world over these next few weeks as part of this course. We're going to listen to Tim Keller, Don Carson, John Piper, Conrad Mbewe, Jeremy McCoy. These are preachers who are known for their helpful expository preaching. And their preaching, you'll notice, is delivered in a number of different situations, local churches, in lockdown, in their own homes, and at conferences. And their sermons are taken from a variety of different passages. But from each preacher, in whatever situation they're preaching from or who they're preaching to, we need to learn a number of things. The first thing we need to do is to hear the word of God that they're preaching. We must recognize that even as we evaluate these preachers, that this Bible, this is the word of the living God. And so we must bow the knee before the Lord of all and listen attentively to all that he has to say to us through his words. But in addition, I want us to learn from these preachers how they preach. I want us to ask what makes their preaching so good or not. And so for each sermon we listen to, I'd like you to do the following things. First of all, carefully read the passage that's being preached from. Then, pray. Pray that the Lord would help you to understand the truth of that passage. But more than that you would further understand the art of preaching from these men, from these preachers. And then thirdly, I'd like you to use the sermon feedback form PDF that I provided for you to make notes as you hear the preaching. Be looking out for the clearly articulated big idea of the passage. Be looking out for the structure of the sermon. Note the main points of application that the preacher makes and notice how they come from the biblical text. And then use the bullet point questions on the second page of the form to evaluate why this sermon was or wasn't engaging. Well, I hope you really enjoy listening over these next few weeks to these preachers that God has gifted for the good of the church in our generation. And I pray that we'll be able to learn from them and become more effective in our own preaching.